Hi, my name's Dan, and this video is one of a series of videos I'm doing on the design of weapons and gameplay elements surrounding weapons in video games, which is part of a larger suite of videos that I'm doing on game design topics, primarily for my teaching at Northumbria University, but also made available for anybody who's interested in these things. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the concept of unlocking weapons, which is where you don't allow players access to all the weapons in the game at the start of the game, and as they progress through the game, they are given access as they go along. And I think if you're watching this, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. So I want to ask just a couple of questions, which are not going to take me very long. So one is why you might use an unlocking system for your weapons, and the second one is how you might go about doing that, and there are a few different tactics you can use. So let's crack into it. So why would you do unlocking? Well, there's a lot of aspects in games that have this unlocking thing. A lot of games do this, and the most pressing reason is progress. It's to give the players a feel of progress as they go through the game. So as the player advances, they get the feeling of achievement as they become stronger and more powerful. And one of the ways in which this happens is for the weapons to become more powerful. And of course, as the player progresses through the game and the player character gets more powerful, also usually the enemies get more powerful as well, or more dangerous. Higher difficulty rating, and it's fairly normal actually for the advancement rate of the enemies and the difficulty to be going slightly faster, or to increase at a slightly bigger rate than the power of the player is doing. And the reason for that is because the player's ability to deal with the enemies is mostly to do with the power of the player character, and whatever that may look like, and weapons are only part of that, potentially. But also because as they get better at the game, their ability will get better. And so that's why why good games will often do a mismatch between those, in that the difficulty of the enemies goes faster. The second reason is to give players new things to play with. So the idea of a new toy, especially when there are significant change of a new style of gun, or a particularly powerful gun or weapon of some kind. So giving the player a BFG, or a magical longbow, or something like that, allows them, or nuclear weapons, depends on the kind of game, but it allows them to have this new thing to play with, and these create milestones in the game, and they can be used as a reward for the player for getting that far in the game. And then finally, another reason for unlocking almost anything in a game, so this applies to weapons as well, is that if you give the player everything that's available at the beginning of the game, there is a tendency to swamp them with too much choice and too much complexity. And so it's better to start off simple and introduce more choice as you go along. And more complexity, so that they cope with it as it goes through. Okay, so you don't have to do unlocking, but many games do, and these are the reasons why that would happen. Right, so let's have a look at the second question, which is how. And there are, as I said at the start, there are a few tactics that you can use here. One that I'm very used to from old school first-person shooters. So my game-playing experience goes way back to the original Doom. I have no idea what year that was, 1990-something, I think. Anyway, as you played through that game, you got to new weapons, because weapons were things that you physically picked up as you walked over them, and they just weren't available in the early game, and so they didn't start to to become seen until he got further into the game. So it was the spatial placement. You can also do it by level, especially if you've got an RPG. This is quite a common tactic. So just basically putting a restriction on weapons to say this weapon can't be used until you're level X, 10, 53, 175, depending on what kind of leveling system you've got in your game. It's possibly less easier to do this if you don't have a level system, but sometimes games have targeted levels, as in, you know, a level with handguns, a level with swords, or something like that. So separated experience into different skills, as it were, and then you can do unlocking by that if you want to. And players are very used to this. So it might seem quite artificial to say, "Oh no, you can't use a big sword until you're level 13, and before that you're absolutely useless with it, and after that suddenly you're perfect with it." And there's this kind of unreal thing that happens. But players accept implicitly whatever tactic you're going to use for unlocking, as long as it doesn't seem unfair in any way. Players are going to go, "Yeah, okay, that's how this game works," and just accept it and run with it. Price is another one. So this is more of a soft gating, in the sense that different players will reach the capability at different points in time, potentially, to be able to buy a weapon. You just price them out at the early stages. One thing that this potentially does encourage, if you use prices for unlocking or for restricting access, is that it does tend to encourage grinding, and so that depends on what your attitude is towards grinding as a game designer, whether you want your game to be grindy or not. So some players like grinding, some players hate grinding, and some players are somewhere in between. There has been noticed some potential links between grinding and what some people call game addiction, and some people call problematic playing. So it's something to think carefully about. And then the final one is you could unlock through the progress of the story or through the quest progress for the game. So if you don't have a level system, this and you have an open world, so you can't do it by doing it spatially, then this is probably the best way to go about things. If you've got quests in your game, and a lot of games do, then just finding out at what point the player is, and then once they pass a certain threshold or certain point, then making new weapons available. And you can just do this by just going, "Oh yes, suddenly they appear in the world, suddenly they appear in shops." But there is an opportunity here to actually use it as a quest reward, to say, "Yeah, you've done something specific here. As a reward, you can now have shotguns, and in fact, here's your first shotgun as a reward." So this is quite a good tactic. I want to quickly go back and mention doing it by level again. One of the advantages of doing that is that it is also somewhat softer, like the price is. Not quite so much, but it is. So it's determining exactly when that happens in terms of game progress will be different for different players depending on how they approach the leveling. But one good thing about using levels for unlocking things is that if the player faces an enemy that's too hard, and especially if this is open world situations, then they have the opportunity to go away, level up, get access to new weapons, and come back and try again when they're more powerful. Anyway, that's a quick tour of my thoughts on the unlocking of weapons, so that's it from me for now.